I start cleaning without saying much. Then my ex-husband, James, talks to me. You're not even crying. James thought I would resist and cry when he asked for a divorce. Honestly, I thought he was selfish. I wasn't the only one who stopped loving him. Well, James, you're the one who's going to have a tougher time after the divorce. Instead of crying, I could barely stop myself from laughing. What do you mean? James, my ex-husband, asked me, looking suspicious. Between you, a housewife, and me, a successful corporate worker, you'll have a harder time after the divorce. And I plan to marry someone else while you'll be alone. Well, that might be true in a regular situation, but it looks like Emma, the woman you're cheating with, isn't exactly top-notch. Wait, how do I know her name? My name is Kate, and I'm 32 years old. I'm a housewife. I met my husband James when we were both the same age at a party. We hit it off right away, becoming good friends. James worked in sales at a trading company, making a lot more money than most people our age. Because of him, I've had a comfortable life, but our marriage had a big problem. Things weren't going well. It was a serious issue. We'd been married for 7 years already. At first, we were deeply in love, spending lots of time together and sharing meals, even when James was busy with work. But that love faded away. Take care. What about dinner? I don't need it. I'll eat out. You can go to bed first. I'll be home late. All right, got it. When we first got married, he used to say, eating together with you, Kate, is my greatest happiness. But now, it's normal for him to come home after midnight, finding me already asleep, and leaving for work without a proper talk in the morning. It's like being ignored by a teenager going through puberty. When these days became the norm, I noticed some changes in James. Huh? Did he always use this hair product? And now he has a whole bunch of skincare products and cologne. Before, he didn't care much about how he looked. He mostly wore suits and didn't have many casual clothes. But suddenly, he's buying expensive brand-name outfits. I wouldn't mind if he just decided to start caring more about his appearance. I always thought he should. But the reason for this change seems strange. Watching James closely, I started feeling suspicious. He began using his phone in secret, even taking it with him to the bathroom and shower. He used to leave it lying around, and I almost sat on it a few times, worrying I might damage it. Why has he suddenly changed so much? As James's behavior continued, my suspicions grew stronger. Was he cheating whenever he came home late? But I had no solid proof, just doubts. Despite the distance in our relationship, a part of me still wanted to believe in him. So the idea of my suspicions being true terrified me. I tried to act like everything was okay, hoping to improve our relationship. I tried to talk more and suggested going out together, but every time I reached out, I was met with indifference. I guess it's understandable. After 7 years of marriage, our relationship had been shaky for a while. Despite my efforts, feeling ignored made me feel incredibly lonely. With all this happening, my emotions started to wear thin. One night, I couldn't hold it in any longer, and I finally decided to confront James. Hey, are you cheating on me? I finally asked to James. He just looked at me, not saying a word. Come on, say something. Are you? He stayed silent for a moment. Then, without a word, he got up from the couch and came over to where I was sitting at the table. He lowered his head towards me. I'm sorry, Kate. I want a divorce. I was speechless, completely caught off guard by his unexpected confession. Ignoring my stunned silence, he went on. I've fallen in love with someone else. I want to start a new life with her. How could he say something so selfish without even thinking? What about our 7 years together? I had a feeling there was another woman, but I never expected him to drop this bombshell so suddenly. All my efforts to fix our relationship seemed pointless. Was the man I fell in love with really this heartless and selfish? When we first met, I thought he was the most amazing person in the world. I couldn't find the words to say, my mind swirling with these thoughts. Then my husband said something that made me doubt if I heard him right. The truth is, she's pregnant with my child. I want to be with her for our child's future. I felt like everything was spinning, like I was about to collapse. Everything around me seemed to turn white. We hadn't had a child in our 7 years together. We hadn't even been using protection. In fact, we had been actively trying to conceive and had sought infertility treatments. Despite our efforts, we couldn't have a child. Medical reports showed my husband had fertility issues, but he always expressed his desire for a child. So despite the challenges, we never stopped trying. I always did my best to meet his expectations. Lately, though, our relationship had lost its spark, and we stopped trying to conceive. It seems his decision to divorce was largely influenced by the fact that he was having a child with his mistress. I've always wanted a child, especially to show my mom her grandchild soon. You understand, right, Kate? So please, let's divorce. My mother-in-law had been seriously ill and hospitalized for the past 2 years. I understood his urgency to give her a grandchild. But to have a child with another woman instead of his wife, it was devastating. I wanted a child too, which is why I underwent fertility treatments. I thought we were in this together, sharing the pain of infertility. Do you even realize how selfish you're being? I yelled at him in frustration, but James just looked down, apologizing. It felt like he was waiting for the storm to pass, which only made me angrier. What kind of woman is she? Just because she's pregnant with your baby, I'm not ready to accept a divorce. I pressed James to tell me more about the woman he was involved with, but he insisted, I'm sorry, but please respect her privacy. What? How selfish can you be? As your wife, I have a right to know. Tell me everything. But no matter how much I pushed, James refused to share any significant details about her. She's 2 years younger than you, Kate, that's all. She works with me. What a joke. He must really care about her. Despite my persistence, James wouldn't give any real answers. For a few days we argued about it, but I adamantly refused to agree to a divorce on James's terms. I didn't want to give in to him so easily. Throughout our discussions, James kept apologizing and bowing his head. Please, I no longer have feelings for you. What's the point in staying married? Even my mother knows about this and she's fine with it. Apparently, James had already spoken to my mother-in-law about our situation. That shook me. While my relationship with my mother-in-law had been strained lately, I thought we were still close. Yet, James kept dropping bombshells one after another. I've already given her an engagement ring. We're planning to live together soon. All that's left is for us to get a divorce, James revealed. I felt dizzy, like I was going to faint. My husband James was actually serious about leaving me for the woman he was cheating with, but I still couldn't bring myself to agree to a divorce. This tug-of-war between James and me went on for almost a month. When James seemed to have run out of patience, he begged on his knees. I can't do this anymore. Please just agree to the divorce. Our relationship has been broken for a long time. There's no point in dragging it out like this. Please divorce me, my husband begged, his forehead pressed against the floor in a pleading posture. I had been resisting for nearly a month. Maybe it was time to accept the inevitable and agree to the divorce. Fine, let's go through with the divorce. But I'm asking for alimony and my fair share of our assets. I understand. I'm prepared for that, I said. We discussed the alimony in detail, and I requested $50,000. It was more than usual, but considering I had invested a lot in our home during our 7 years of marriage, I felt it was fair compensation. James agreed to my terms. We also decided on asset division, with me receiving half of the balance in our joint account and him covering the cost of my relocation. Then, I signed the divorce papers that James had prepared. As I filled out the paperwork, my heart was filled with various emotions. Even though our love had faded, we had shared a life together under the same roof for 7 years, and it was all coming to an end with just a single piece of paper. Without any lingering feelings for James, I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall the next day, and our mutual divorce was finalized. Soon after, James wasted no time in marrying the other woman. Whether she rushed him or not, with a baby on the way, he probably wanted to be with her as soon as possible. I was honestly taken aback by how quickly he moved on, especially considering I hadn't even finished sorting through our shared belongings in the apartment. Feeling the need to hurry and pack up my things, I went to the apartment we used to share. As luck would have it, our timing overlapped, and James was also there when I arrived. Without exchanging many words, I immediately started tidying up the space. James, my ex-husband, finally spoke up. "You're not shedding a tear, huh?" It seemed James had expected me to resist and cry when he pleaded for a divorce on his knees. Honestly, I had always thought he was quite self-centered, and he wasn't the only one who had fallen out of love. Maybe because I had been refusing the divorce for so long, James might have assumed I still had feelings for him. It seemed like a misunderstanding on his part, But the reason I hadn't agreed to the divorce right away was because I was stubbornly determined to investigate his mistress on my own terms, rather than simply going along with James's wishes. Well, James, you're the one who's going to have a tougher time after the divorce, not me. Instead of crying, I could barely hold back laughter. Huh? What do you mean? My ex-husband James looked at me suspiciously. Considering you're a corporate hotshot and I'm just a housewife, you'll have more challenges. And since I'm planning to remarry, you'll be on your own. Well, in a normal situation that might be true. But it seems like Emma, the woman you're cheating with, is quite trashy. Wait, how do you know her name? You thought I was just being stubborn and refusing our divorce. I continued, watching James's face pale. I had hired a private investigator to look into her all this time. In just a few weeks, I had gathered a lot of information about his mistress. Firstly, her name is Emma. She's 27 years old, divorced twice, and currently living at her parents' home. Emma seems to have a questionable reputation, constantly involved with different men. She even lost custody of her child due to being a bad influence. Indeed, the investigator saw her entering a motel with other men. Just to be sure, I had asked for photos as evidence. When I shared all the information and showed him the pictures, James collapsed on the spot. No way. Emma can't be like that. She only had eyes for me, and we were planning to build a happy family. James seemed deeply in love with Emma. It was frustrating, but this woman indeed seemed to have a talent for charming men. What? You're lying. This is all made up to shake me up. This photo must be fake, James protested. It was exasperating to see him so foolishly blinded by love. Believe it or not, it's up to you. But even now, your mistress is involved with other men. Or should I say, your new wife? Maybe the child isn't even yours. James's face grew even paler. No way, not Emma. These were the findings from the private investigators, so the possibility of being deceived was high. Perhaps among her multiple boyfriends, James was the one who made the most money, which is why she chose him to marry. Quite an honor, isn't it? Even if the child may not be biologically yours, you wanted a child anyway, so raise your child well. I delivered this final blow to James and left the apartment with my belongings. After a while, I received an email from him. He wanted to get back together. As I suspected, the child Emma had given birth to wasn't James's. When he confronted Emma, she retorted, "I didn't know whose child it was until it was born." But since James was already married to Emma, legally he had to raise the child she gave birth to as his own. James had just been a money tree for her. As proof, when paying alimony to me, James had covered Emma's portion too. So, in total, he paid me $80,000. Furious, James confronted Emma, but she simply said, "You seemed happy to serve me." Eventually, she left the child behind and disappeared. James called me, begging, "You were right. I was deceived. I'm really sorry. I want to start over again." But I was just disgusted. You think I'm going to come back to you just because you're saying those things? You had an affair, that's a fact. You betrayed me, that's also a fact. You need to accept reality. I hung up the phone after that. Later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that James handed over the child Emma left behind to her parents, telling them to take responsibility. Emma's parents responded, "That's troublesome. You raised the child." But James stubbornly refused, saying, "I have no obligation to raise a child that's not biologically mine." He submitted DNA test results to prove the child wasn't his and revoked his acknowledgement of the child. Emma's parents apparently didn't know the child wasn't James's. After they found Emma, they took her back home and are forcing her to raise the child in semi-captivity. They're keeping a close eye on her to prevent her from freely meeting other men. Meanwhile, even though my ex-husband James has cut all ties with Emma, he paid me $80,000 in alimony, including Emma's portion, which wiped out his savings. He's been demanding Emma repay the alimony he covered for her, but she doesn't seem to care and claims she can't pay back what she doesn't have. Sadly, James has become a divorced man with no savings, unable to focus on his work, and making many mistakes. Now he's been reassigned to a rural area with no chance of promotion, living a lonely life. On the other hand, I've moved back to my parents' house and am helping with their farming business. After a few years, I fell in love and married a local fisherman. We don't have children, but I'm happily spending every day with my husband, who is always kind to me.